Welcome to Chris Horner's Corner. In today's edition, I want to talk about altitude training. We've seen it now for a decade at least, where we're talking about teams always going up to altitude and doing big time training. We've seen it with Lance Armstrong years, we've seen it with Alberto Contador, we've of course seen it with Chris Froome and Sky, all the riders talking about it. Now we're seeing it with Jumbo-Visma. Well, I want to highlight a little bit about altitude training because if we go back a couple months in November, it was Brandon McNulty from UAE Team Emirates who had said in an article that altitude training just really didn't work for him. And what worked better was for Brandon McNulty to go back to Arizona, be with his family, and train there in the heat. And I got to agree with Brandon McNulty. I'm not really a believer in altitude. And here's the problem. I understand it works for riders to go up to altitude. I am not arguing that. Just like in my earlier videos, I'm not arguing that if you want to go do interval training, that it will work to make you a good cyclist. I'm just saying I never had to do it. And I never had to do altitude training. And yet, in 1996, domestically, while riding for Nutrifig, I won 13 races that year and dominated the season. And then all the way in 2013, I won the Vuelta a España Grand Tour, the first American ever to do it. So when I read the article there from Brandon McNulty, I saved it on my computer because I thought it'd be a great topic. Now here's what I really want to know, and we never get to see these kind of details when a rider says, well, we went to altitude, or I did this training, or I did that training. And when they say, well, altitude makes you better, they say altitude makes you better, but is it the altitude that's making the riders better, or is it the fact that they're no longer at home? Are they no longer mowing the lawn? Are they not washing their car? Are they not going out with their girlfriends at night? Are they getting a massage when they're at home? Because all those things, when they go up to altitude in your Jumbo-Visma Lisa bike, when you're one of those big teams that have done it now for the last basically 2 decades where they've been going up to altitude and selling it to you fans and viewers of bike racing about how important it is to go to altitude. Is it really the altitude? Is it going up to altitude that's increasing their hematocrit levels and then allowing them to come back down to sea level and race at sea level and be stronger and better? Because my experience with altitude, I didn't have that. But when we see all the riders, they do have a mechanic up there washing their bike. They do have a soigneur giving them a massage every day. They don't have their girlfriend up there that they're going out to parties and discos that night. They don't have their mother-in-law that's feeding them that magical chocolate pie every holiday or every time you go over for the weekend and have dinner with your wife's parents. Those differences start to add up, right? If they're staying at home and let's say they're between altitude, they're riding with the team every day, doing big time 4, 5, 6, 7, 8-hour training rides with their team, that's a big time difference than if you're back home and you had other things to do 3, 4 times a week. Let's say they got kids. Let's say their kids got a Little League soccer game, and so you don't want to miss the Little League soccer game because you're home and you're only 5 minutes away from the field. So instead of training 5 hours, they train 3.5. They go over to the Little League game and they watch the Little League game for 2-3 hours and they socialize with everyone standing on their feet the whole time versus if they were up at altitude, they rode for 5 hours. They went over to the soigneur and they got a massage that night. The mechanic washed their bike. They went to dinner. They didn't fix themselves dinner. They brought the chef up there to altitude if you're one of the big teams, right? So what I really want to know in order to become a believer when it comes to altitude training is what is the difference? Can these riders that actually say, well, altitude did it for me, that's all they tell us, right? They don't show any proof. Except for maybe they won the Tour de France. Maybe that's their proof, and that's all you need to see. I want to see more. I want to compare the Tour de France that they lost, the training that they did in May and June before that year's Tour de France, what their weight looked like before they went into that year's Tour de France, and I want to compare that to the year when they went up to altitude and then later they won the Tour de France, right? That's what really matters. That's the differences. Now, we can see the blood values, we can see a bunch of medical checks and stuff like that. That could probably prove some differences there too, but I don't know if it could be that big. Because, guys, when I won the Vuelta a España in 2013, I was in San Diego, California. That's sea level, on the coast. It doesn't get any lower, and I still won the Vuelta a España. And in 2013, someone, I imagine, at the Vuelta a España must have come from altitude, because they all do, right? So that's what I'm saying. When we start looking at different details, and you're talking about altitude, like Brandon McNulty said he didn't like it. I'll tell you I didn't like it, but Brandon McNulty is about the only other real pro that I've seen with real solid results that says, hey, I don't like altitude, I don't want to do it, and I've told my team I don't want to do it. And I was the same way throughout my whole career. But every time when I was at home in San Diego, California, or here in Bend, Oregon, and to be fair, Bend, Oregon is about 3,500 feet in altitude, but that's not really considered altitude. You got to go about 5,000 or higher to really get the benefits of what everybody tells us their altitude training benefits are. But again, when you hear a rider say, well, this is why I went better because I was at altitude, was it altitude or was it the soigneur? Was it the mechanic? Was it not washing your car? Was it not taking your dog for a walk? Was it not cooking in the kitchen for an hour, getting yourself dinner while having snacks there on the counter when you're chopping up the cheese as you're getting ready to shred it, but you take a handful and throw in a handful of cheese and you've added 400 calories in there that you didn't realize you ate even before you sat down at the dinner table, versus if you're up there at the hotel there in the Spanish Islands and you're training up there in your Visma Lisa bike, you have a soigneur, you have a cook, you have a mechanic, and all those guys looking after you. So next time when you start seeing riders say, well, altitude works for me, I don't disagree that they perform better after they came from altitude, but really what I want to see again, what did their training look like when they were at sea level? Because when I won the Vuelta a España, my training was spot on every day. I wasn't cooking my own dinners, I wasn't washing my car. I would drop my car off on my training rides. I'd jump in my car, drive it about 10 minutes over to the detail place, drop my car off, say, hey, I'll see you guys in 6 hours. I go train for 6 hours, I come back and pick up my car, it'd be spotless inside and out, and I'd have it completely detailed, and it's one less thing on my mind, right? But are those riders that didn't win the Tour de France or didn't win a Grand Tour, when they were doing their training at home instead of altitude when they won, did they wash their car? Did they go out that night? Did they cook their own dinners? Because again, every little detail like that starts to add up. And every time you start seeing these articles talking about how they're eating, how they're dieting, and it's working so much better, they're really not giving you all of the details enough to really change your whole program. But yet, everybody, when I'm on the group rides, talking about how they want to go to altitude to train to get better. And I'm thinking like, well, I need a little bit more information, because San Diego, California worked pretty good for me in 2013, and it's at sea level, guys. So every time you start seeing these articles, keep it in mind, they're not giving you the whole picture. They're just telling you, hey, we're at altitude, it worked, I won the Tour de France, so it must be 100%. That altitude is what did it. They do a lot of things up there at home, and they do less things when they're out there at altitude. So that could be the difference, right? Could be. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm not saying altitude didn't work, because clearly guys won the Grand Tours when they came from altitude. I'm just saying I need a little bit more proof on how a kid from San Diego, California could win a Grand Tour if altitude is that important, and I never went there. Make sure you guys like and subscribe. I'll bring some more videos and some more nutrition, some more training information. So if you're into riding your bike, hit the like and subscribe button. I'll see you guys on the next edition real soon.